discussions in community, and we'll be thinking that we should have not only organizations that fight for animals, but we should invite every other organization that is fighting for another cause outside there, because everybody is going through some kind of struggle. So personally, I think that if we get together to work together, we're gonna get a faster way to change this system, not only for the animals, but of course for the humans as well. For that, we need to be, working together. And this time we're gonna have Impact, that is directed by Leah, that has been an activist for 20 years already. Ooh, nice, so nice. And she lives in Sacramento. And I don't really know much about her organization, but I have seen that she's organizing many protests and rallies, and she's very powerful. Like the first time that I saw her speaking, I was like, whoa, this is what we need in the community. Especially being a woman is super important to put ourselves up there to show how strong we are. As females, as a woman of color, it is super important, and absolutely, I feel like Leah represents what we're looking for in the community. Someone strong and powerful and fearless to stand up for what we're looking for in the change in the system. So, Leah, please take it away.
Wow. Well, that's an awesome introduction. Thank you so much. Thank you. I appreciate you guys, and you giving me a lot of support. And I definitely appreciate your messages. I appreciate when you come up to me and we're out at events and you tell me just how much you support, not just myself and my organization, but the various of us folks that are out here doing the work. So I really appreciate this opportunity, and you even asking me to be here. Like, this is awesome. Especially since you guys, this is not like your first line of work that you do out here. So with animal rights, I mean, that's an activist level of work that for you all to ask me to come on here is just an honor, because a lot of times people just stick to what they know and stick to what they're interested in, and they don't go outside of that at all. So so that's awesome. So I really appreciate your support and you even having me here to begin with. This is great. So I just want to start by saying that. I just want to kind of start from the beginning, so to speak, since we got time. So we mentioned, when you said 20 years of activism. So for me, that's half my life. But, and when I say 20 years, so my first protest was actually Rodney King. And I was only 14, so I didn't know what I was doing and where I was going and why we were doing this. And, obviously it was pretty chaotic, but I just knew that the way I felt like something I wanted to do. I didn't feel the fear. I wasn't nervous. I didn't feel like this was the wrong thing to do. For me, it was more, this is where I need to be. Like, it almost felt like home to me, to be out with the community and be fighting for something that we believe so hard in, and fighting for the rights of so many people that are impacted by things that are going on within the community. So that was my first experience with protesting itself. Now, as far as like advocacy work, well, that's not always pounding the pavement. A lot of times that's behind closed doors. That's a lot of things that people don't hear about. That's where the media doesn't go. Those are the things that we don't advertise, as far as those actions go. A lot of these things are not photographed. They're not posted on social media. I mean, because you got to remember, like, social media is fairly new, when it comes to what you all see right now in the media and what you see right now. Right now, everything we do in life is posted. Everything is on social media, literally everything that we do. So it wasn't always like that. So a lot of the work that we've done some years ago, we don't even have documentation of that, as by way of like photographs and media clips and things like that. Nowadays, everything's video recorded, and so we're great for the next 20 years. Looking back on today, everything that we do in life, from what we eat to where we go, I mean, everything is documented that way. So for me, I could tell you that my true step into fighting for the lives of others was through the school districts. And for me, that was, it startled because I had to raise my nephew because my sister was killed. And so he had a lot of disabilities and a lot of mental illness and a lot of stuff that goes along with the child, that he was 6 when she was killed. So there was a lot of things that I needed to advocate for with him. So within the school districts and advocating for him, I then had my own son who was diagnosed with autism at 18 months. And so then that thrusted me into this advocate position, not by choice, you know, like here I am, here's something that I know nothing about, but all I know is that I got to get my son the services and the resources that he needs to get him through this, because the doctors say he can't do anything, he'll never do anything, and he'll never make it. So I knew that I then had to be his voice, and I had to be that strong advocate to make sure that he got everything he needed in order to be successful. So that put me into a space in the school districts to where I wasn't just on the front line with teachers anymore. Now I was at the board meetings. Now I'm at the special ed meetings. Now I'm down at the protests that they have down at the school districts. Now I'm over in these district meetings that they're holding and board meetings. And I was educating myself on what the rights are of a parent. And in doing that, I noticed that there were a lot of other Black and brown children that were also being disserviced. If you're a parent that doesn't know where to go or who to talk to, say you're a parent that is struggling with poverty, or maybe there's illiteracy and you can't even read and write, or maybe there's substance abuse problems, or maybe there's abuse going on at home. There's a lot of different variables that then cause a parent to not be able to really advocate for their child the way they may want to, because there's so many other underlying conditions going on within the home that just distract you from being able to do that. So I found myself in a position to where I saw other children that too needed services, or other families that knew what they wanted but didn't know how to go and get it. So then I knew that I wanted to then become that leader, that advocate that I wish I had when I was going through these things on my own. So that was like the first step for me in actually going out and speaking for others, and speaking to an issue that's not popular, speaking to an issue that, you know, not much people know anything about, doesn't really get much attention or respect for that matter. But I was able to do that. And in doing that, it made me feel like this is what I need to do, because this is what I wish I had for me. So that was the school district. Soon after that, after I got my feet wet with the school district, I then went to work into the prisons. Well, that puts you in a whole nother, that's a whole nother type of advocacy, you know. I was free staff. I did the self-improvement classes. I taught them there. I did visitation. I met with families. And I was about unifying families with their fathers, their husbands, their brothers, whatever that they had been estranged from. And that put me on a different level of what advocacy truly is. So that's that realm that nobody wants to touch either, because, you know, for so many people, when you go to jail, especially prison, you're just a throwaway. So there's no respect, and there's no, we don't really care about what happens to you. There's no care and concern for folks that are incarcerated. So for me, I was able to meet, I always say, as far as my career, that was the highlight of my career, because I met the best people ever in there. I mean, I learned so much from them. I was there to teach them, but they really taught me so much, so much. And I was able to help them in ways that they wouldn't have got if someone like me wasn't there inside giving them that help. So then I took that on out to the streets. With, once that contract was over and I was no longer there every single day, I then said, okay, well, what about those folks that are getting out that need to then come out and figure life out when they've been locked up 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years? What do they do? Because the world is not the same as it was when they went in, especially folks that went in as juveniles or young, very young adults. They were never able to even learn how to be an adult. How do they function in a world that they know nothing about? Because they don't prepare them for the world. They don't. They give you $100, they open that gate and tell you, you know, figure it out, and they expect to see you again. That's recidivism, right? They expect that. So with that expectation, the rehabilitation piece never takes place, because their assumption is you're just going to make your way back here. So that allowed me to then help those folks that were getting out, help them figure out job placement, how to get medical services, how to get a license, how to get their social security card and their birth certificate, and how to learn how to drive, and all these things that we take for granted, all these things that we think just come with you know, the growth of us growing into adulthood, that they don't receive basic things like that, that seem like common sense or seem like, well, everybody should know how to do that. They don't. They're not equipped with that. So I've been able to be that person to be able to service them as well. I'll fast forward a bit into the protesting now versus then. So a lot of what you see now, present day, as in today, is really a trickle effect of the George Floyd incident, right? George Floyd, the knee on the neck incident, 8 minutes and 46 seconds with George Floyd. That brought a lot of folks out. And the folks that you see out now, I call them the new folks, just because you think about like maybe 2 years ago when Stephon Clark was killed. Then after him, it was Brandon Smith, and then it was Daryl Richards, and then it was Marshall Miles, all within a year, right here in Sacramento. So although we know those popular names, we know about Trayvon Martin, we know about Eric Gardner, we know about Philando Castile, we know about Freddie Gray and Tamir Rice. We know these popular names, right? But those happen in cities and states that weren't right here where we are right here. So we heard about them because we saw them on TV. You know, we watch them, we see these things happen, and we sit back and, wow, that's horrible. And, oh, poor guy. And this is horrible what's happening over in that state, you know. But with Stephon Clark, that was something that happened right here in our backyard. It was something that all of us could be a part of. We didn't have to fly to get there. We didn't have to travel to get there. It was so I originated with Stephon Clark. So we pounded the pavement with him. You know, we were out every single night, and we were all over the town. We were down at Convention Center. We were down at we shut down the freeway. We shut down the Golden One Center. We did pivotal, strong, disruptive tactics that cost the city money deliberately in an attempt to hear our message and hear our voice, and for us to be heard that we simply want you to stop killing us, right? So that sounds simple enough, right? That's the simple request, you know, stop killing us. But it kept happening. So I didn't stop with Stephon. It continued to go even after that. It wouldn't stop. So that forced us to be out here in ways that weren't just on the street. We also were in City Hall. You know, in City Hall, we were there every Tuesday, and we did die-ins out of the police station. And we did, like I said, the Convention Center, and we were over at the Capitol weekly. And we were just really out here. And that's when we got to learn about the assembly member bills that are on the table, the different propositions that are on the table, all these things that directly affect our life. That if we don't ask about this stuff, if we don't educate ourselves on this stuff, we don't know anything about it. But all those decisions that are being made within that Capitol and being made down at City Hall directly affect our life. And so I then learned by being there on a weekly basis that we have to be involved. We have to be a part of this decision making. We have to be heard. So even if they only give us that 2 minutes to speak, we got to make that 2 minutes count. And we got to give it our all. And then we got to come back next week and give another 2 minutes. And damn it, if we got to do that every single week, we're going to get our message across. And we did. And we showed up in hundreds. I mean, there were hundreds of us that would show up. We had overflow. We had to overflow on the outside of City Hall. We would stake out there and bring our chairs, and we would wait for our turn, and we'd be there all night. So that really, along with us pounding the pavement in protest style as far as outside goes, we were able to protest in other ways as well. So then that kind of died down. What happens after the year mark, because everybody has that memory, you know, they call it the angelversary, and you know, this is what happened last year. And then the crowds start to drizzle. They start to fade out, right? Just like that momentum we kind of see now. It's fading out a bit. Well, then George Floyd happened. George Floyd happened, and it brought people out in droves again. Someone's in. Do I just put admit? You got it? Okay. Thank you. So then George Floyd happened. And so you got all these folks that I've never seen before, I've never heard of before. There were groups that were forming that we had never heard of, which is great. It's great because we needed that. We needed that. The folks that were out there marching in the streets with like Stephon per se, they're no longer out here. It's a switch. So for me, having been in both spaces, it was really pivotal for me to see the difference in crowd versus then and now. And wondering where are those folks that were out here with me every night, you know, especially like we call them the OGs, those that were here way before me, you know, that were out there. A lot of strong men that were out there during those times, they're not out here anymore. So now we have a new wave of folks. And having to, did I mess that up for him? Okay, all right. So then having to basically kind of acclimate to the now has been difficult for me, I must admit. Also, we got COVID. COVID's an issue. COVID's an issue because a lot of the advocacy work that we have done over the years, we had to halt. There's so many events that we normally have for the community. There's so many things that we typically do for the community that we haven't been able to do because of COVID. So being at the Capitol often, we haven't been able to do that. Being down at City Hall, haven't been able to do that. We have a lot of festivals and multicultural events and Pan-African events and a lot of things that we were not able to do. So the summer was like a wash. It was pretty much, it was difficult for us. The only thing we could do was get out there and protest in the streets. That's one thing we could do, and that's something that we did do. So I'm gonna back up a minute because I want to talk about how Impact originated, because Impact has not been around for 20 years. So I just want to be clear on what I mean and why Impact formed to begin with. So I was out here just as me, Leah Shank, out here. I'm a mom. I'm a mother of 4, and I have my family, and I'm just somebody that has advocated for those that I've loved over the years. And I've always been supportive of other people's organizations and other people's fight and other people's groups and their events. I'm the one that always shows up and lends support to those groups. I started to see, and it was around the Stephon Clark, around a little bit before that, probably with that we had some deaths before that. So probably Joseph Mann era. I don't know if you guys know who that was, but he was killed also by the police. So probably dated more back to those times. But I started to see things that needed to be done in this community. And I had heavy expectations of certain folks. And I found myself being super overly critical of how people did things or how they didn't do things. I really found myself going to events thinking, wow, they should have did this, or they should have done it over here, or it should have been like this, or if this was my event, I would have done it this way. And so I really was trying to find my niche. I'm not a Sacramento native. So for me, there we go. Me not being a Sacramento native, I had to really find a delicate way to assert myself into a leader position here in this space. I'm very respectful of where people, their grassroots. I'm very respectful of those that own the space. And I never wanted to come into in a way of taking over or anyone else that has been here before me. So I had to find a way to do it respectfully and find a way to do it to where it was done with proper etiquette. I think that's the right word for it. So Impact was something that I had thought of years ago. And I actually was operating under the Impact name for years before I finally made it a legal nonprofit. I was doing a lot of work under the Impact because the premise of Impact was there. As far as the outline and the purpose of Impact was there, I just didn't know exactly how to assert it as far as the other organizations that are out here right now. So I then knew that there were a lot of events and a lot of support given to, let's say, the city of Sacramento, right? Not the county though. It was just the city of Sacramento. So I realized, well, and I would go up into these events and I would show up because I don't live in the city of Sacramento. So I would drive to these events, which were not close to me. I would drive out to these events and support these organizers. And then I noticed the trend was that this is where the services dwelled. So what about those communities that are in need that are still in Sacramento County, but not in the city? So then North Highlands and Citrus Heights and Carmichael and Fair Oaks and even Folsom, what about Antelope? What about these areas of these folks that need these services and that can benefit from these events? What about them? What about them? Because they don't even know what's going on over in South Sac or Elk Grove or downtown. Or better yet, maybe they can't get there. Maybe they don't have transportation. Maybe they're handicapped, maybe they're elderly and they can't get there. So what about them? So I know that I had posed this to many organizers and nobody was receptive to it. It was just kind of like, this is what we do, this is how we've been doing it, and this is just what it's going to be. So then that was the avenue that I took as far as getting Impact on the ground, get it running, get it up, form a nonprofit, and let's go and let's do it the way I think it should be done. So Impact is a grassroots organization here in Sacramento, and it was designed to bridge the gaps between the different communities within Sacramento County. Now, in doing that, I then was able to then target also those surrounding cities and counties of Sacramento that too filter into Sacramento. Sacramento is the state capital of California. This is a big deal. Where we live is very powerful. A lot takes place right here in Sacramento, in this county. A lot takes place. And there's a lot of powerful people in play that control the whole state. So I was able then to go into those surrounding cities and surrounding counties and then service them as well, which is great, which is even bigger than I ever imagined, because I didn't know if those folks were ready for this kind of work. And originally they weren't. And even still in some cases, they're not. So I had to figure out a way to do it in a delicate way, almost selling yourself as a salesperson, to say, this is what I'm here for, because this is the assumption. Anytime we show up, the assumption is that we're coming to disrupt, or the assumption is we're coming to based on color and creed and culture and background. But that's not always the case. So what does service looks like? What does that mean? When we say go out to service the community, we say go out to offer community resources to the community. What does that mean, right? So when we say we service the community, for me, I believe that community work should be done based on whatever the community needs. Now, there are some community activists that stay what they call their lane. So they focus on one particular impacting element within the community, and they stay to that, which is okay. There's nothing wrong with that. I just wanted to be somebody, because I think about my own life, and I think about everything that has affected my life. I think of everything that I've had to go through, whether it be a child into adulthood or to the now. And it's so much. It's so much. How can I just say that I'm only going to be an advocate for one particular issue when there's 100 other issues going on affecting our community? I didn't want to be the one to turn a blind eye to those things, because that's what's happening. That's what's happening. There's so many people that are screaming out that they need help. They need resources. They need things. But where are those people? Where are the people that are going to be there for you? How does that look? And what exactly does that mean as far as community advocacy work? So when we say service the community, we go where the community needs us to go, period, wherever that is. And that takes us in spaces that are uncomfortable many times. But if we're invited into a space, we go. For one, we can. There shouldn't be any space or any city, any county that we can't go to based on our skin color, our beliefs. It should not be that way. Now, we know that there are certain parts of town where we don't feel comfortable, we don't feel welcome. Those of us that are minorities, we know what that feels like. And so traditionally, for years, we've steered away from those places because we don't feel comfortable there and we're not welcome there. So we traditionally don't go. But with protesting, especially right now with the George Floyd era, is that we've been invited into these spaces. And I'm gonna get to that later on why, but that's really big. That's like critical to the movement within itself. And I wanna talk about the movement because a lot of people hear Black Lives Matter. It's huge, like it's trending everywhere. Everybody knows what it is. You hear everybody talk about it. It's just like, it's the part of the dinner table conversation every night. Well, so there's Black Lives Matter, the brand, the organization, the national brand on a national level. That's Black Lives Matter, the business, which is across the nation. And then they break that down into chapters. So you have Black Lives Matter Los Angeles, Black Lives Matter San Francisco, Black Lives Oakland, whatever. So, and then you have Black Lives Matter, the movement. The movement is separate from that. The movement does not make you a member of a Black Lives Matter organization. I'm not a member of Black Lives Matter organization, never have, and I never will. Black Lives Matter, the movement, is a message to say that our lives matter. Now, the only reason we've ever had to say that, or we even have to go out and say those words, is because we have been oppressed to the magnitude of our lives have not mattered in so many spaces and so many issues within the community that we then have to come out and say, all lives can't matter until Black Lives Matter. Because that's common knowledge. All lives should matter, right? All of us should matter, right? All of us. Yeah, absolutely, right? That's okay. That goes without saying. However, if Black lives don't matter and they don't begin to matter, then we can't say all lives matter, because all would be inclusive of us, Black lives. So that's where that discrepancy is. I want to clear that up because the Black Lives Matter conversation happens a lot and there's a lot of assumptions. I mean, every time we're out, it's an assumption they're Black Lives Matter. They're Black. I'm not Black Lives Matter, right? I'm not. Yes, Black Lives Matter, and I'm never going to stop saying that because I have to say that. I have to say that because in so many people's minds, we don't matter. Because historically, and I don't want to get too deep, but historically, we have not mattered in this country. I mean, dated back to now, we have not mattered. And what you see happening right now is indicative of that message of your life does not matter. Because if our lives mattered, then we would get the same civil liberties that other folks get. And I don't know how blunt you guys want me to be. I'm really trying to watch my mouth. But we don't get the same that other people get. Okay, so I'll leave it at that. As far as the community work that is done out here, that is really, it's inclusive of a lot. So I was invited into the suicide prevention space. That is something that I found great interest in because my nephew has attempted suicide more than I can count. And suicide was something I didn't understand. And I was that mother auntie that was like, get over it, like, you don't feel good, go take a shower, go lay down, take a nap. I'm not a mental health expert and I didn't get it. So for me, being the strong person I am, I didn't understand weakness. I didn't understand, like, what do you mean you want to die because you don't want to do your homework, or you want to die because that person said something mean to you? I didn't get it. I didn't get it. And I didn't have the gentle approach that I should have had as a parent to him. And so every time he attempted suicide, I took it personal. Here you are, you have this lifestyle. I've provided you a home, and you got clothes on your back, and you got a great meal, and I love you. I show you I love you. Your life is great, right? Everything should be fine. Why would you want to kill yourself? You have a great life. And it took me years to realize that him wanting to commit suicide, had nothing to do with me, and had nothing to do with whatever I provided for him. Nothing to do with that. I often thought, if I take you on great trips and we have this wonderful life and I provide this great life for you and do everything I can to raise you under the circumstances of your mom being killed, but being able to do this for you, you should have this want to live your life because I'm providing this great life for you. Then again, but that's me in personalizing it and making it about me. I didn't see that. I didn't see that for years. And it wasn't until NAMI asked me to get involved with it's actually, he's a media guy for one of the newscasters out here locally in Sacramento, is the one that asked me to get involved. And he saw some of the posts that I was putting with my cries for help. Like, I need help. What's going on? Like, why is he saying this? Why is he feeling this way? And he invited me to come out to some of the NAMI events. And that then thrusted me into this realm of being surrounded by folks that everybody got it. Like, everyone understood what suicide meant and where it comes from. And so I was able to then bounce my ideas off these folks and kind of pick their brains and hear their stories. And it helped me to understand my nephew. So I then began to fight for suicide prevention. And I was doing protests for suicide prevention. And I was speaking down back to the school districts I was then going in to speak to the school districts and at the board hearings about suicide prevention and what this means, because even the teachers don't understand it. You know, the teachers don't see the signs. There's a lot of signs, you know, before somebody gets to the I want to kill myself place, there's a lot of signs of depression and cries for help and things that are overlooked. So I was happy to be able to do that and be able to then share my experience with others that I was going through, because it's a very lonely place to be. And it's not something that you feel good talking about. And a lot of people are very judgmental, you know, of you. And even in this case of this not being my biological child and his mom was killed in front of him. I mean, you know, like you would think like, duh, naturally he's going to have some issues, right? It still was put on me because I'm the one raising him. And I found that very difficult. That was hard for me to get through. So being able to be with NAMI, the group, and being able to be involved in that community space was helpful for me in being able to deal with him and understand then what he was going through. He also was type 1 diabetic. So then that took me into juvenile diabetes. So now here's another topic that's huge that I didn't know about. And it was something that I had to figure out how to maneuver through that. So now here I am, and I'm a parent of a child now that has type 1 diabetes. So now I got to learn these things. I have to get a dietitian out here. I got to figure insulin out. I got to, you know, give shots 3-4 times a day. And so then I found myself going to the camps that Kaiser would give, and they would send us out to these camps, and I'd be around other parents and other children that also were type 1 diabetic, excuse me. And that's then another something that I can advocate for. So then I realized, okay. And then I found out that what the school districts were doing were if you had type 1 diabetes and you had to give yourself insulin shots, the school districts used to make your parent come to give you your shot. Well, what does a parent do if they A, don't have transportation, or B, they have to work? What do they do? What does that child do? So then they would say, well, then you need to keep your child at home. So now you're preventing them from coming to get an education because of something that is not their fault, something they can't do anything about. And because it's a health hazard, if they don't get their insulin, that then becomes a medical emergency. So here I am again, I'm back at the school districts. And now here I am, I'm fighting for parents that have to, and then that also brought in the EpiPen and other, you know, allergic reaction type things. And so then we as parents were able to go to the board and bring that to their attention and say, well, no, you know, you have this percentage of children within your school district are type 1 diabetic, and they should not have to stay home. Their parents should not have to leave 2-3 times a day from a work schedule to be able to come and give their child a shot. So I was the first one in the Antelope School District to help train the nurses at the school to supervise these shots. So then what you did was you put the child kind of in charge of their own injections, because, I mean, children ages 6, 7, 8, 9 know how to give themselves a shot. They do it at home, right? So they were able to do this. This is something that the doctors teach them. So then you don't have to wait for mom or dad to come to give the shot. We can then empower these children to give their own shot with medical supervision. And that was a pivotal moment for the school districts, because that gave that student, that child, power over something that feels very powerless to them. And that was good. And they still are doing that to this day. So I'm proud of that, because that was one of those things where I was not able to go and give him a shot. For him, it would have been 3 shots a day during the school day. So it didn't make any sense for him to not be able to give it to him with supervision there at school. So that was school district, that was juvenile diabetes. And then you fast forward to now, and there's issues of homelessness. And so Impact as an organization, all this summer, we went out every single week and we fed the homeless. Nothing that the media needed to give attention to. It's nothing we posted about. You know, some things need to just be done. They don't need to get, have pictures taken. They don't need to get that type of attention like, oh, look at me, I'm feeding the homeless. A lot of things we do in the community just simply need to be done, period. If we see a need, and that's what I mean by community work, if we see a need within the community, you just do it, right? So here it is, it's COVID, everything's shut down, right? So a lot of our homeless community, housed and unhoused, a lot of the way they ate came from them either being out and panhandling. Well, you can't panhandle when there's no people out anymore. You can't stand on the end of the freeway anymore because everything's shut down. Nobody's driving. You know, they used to stand outside these grocery stores or these restaurants and whatnot. But when everything closed, what were they supposed to do? Where do they get food from? Even the homeless shelters closed down to minimal capacity than ever before. So they're out on the street, they have no food, they have no money. So what are they supposed to do? They're supposed to be able to lean to us, community organizers, to get out there and feed them. Now there's some weeks we gave them hot dogs and a bag of chips. You know, none of us are rich, you know, by nature, and none of us, you know, can do it to financial magnitude. Sometimes it's a big hit for some of us. So some weeks it was just that, but they ate. They ate. When you have temperatures of 115 out and they have no water, we go out with ice chests, we give them cold water. And so that was done on a weekly basis. And that's work that doesn't need an invitation. And this is a very important piece that I like to stress, especially now. The community work, when you go out to service folks, you shouldn't need an invitation to do that. You shouldn't have to wait for the city or the county to give you a check to be able to do that. There are some organizations out here and some leaders out here that don't do the work until they're paid for it. Now, there's nothing wrong with getting grants here and there. I mean, a lot of communities thrive. I mean, organizations thrive on that. I mean, that's fine. I mean, everybody, I mean, if you qualify for the grant and get it, that's fine, no problem. That's not what I'm referring to. I'm referring to, I'm going to pay you X amount of money a month for you to go out, but you got to service this amount of people. Everything's based on numbers and quota. So if you go out and you feed the homeless based on that money that the county gave you, you then have to have the homeless sign off on that. They have to write their name on the paper, because then you got to take that back to the county and say, see, here it is. I fed 100 people just like you told me to. That to me is not true community work. That's not you doing it because you have a heart for it and you just want to do it. That's because the community, I mean, the county is paying you to do it. The city is paying you to do something, and then you then are paying yourself. So there's an agenda there. There's an agenda there. Now, don't get me wrong. We all have an agenda. All of us do. It's just a matter of what is the price you're willing to pay for your agenda. How far are you going to go for your agenda? Are you going to sell your soul for that agenda? Are you going to compromise your standards for that agenda? So yes, truly, we all have an agenda. We get up every day and we say, okay, this is what we want to do, or this is what I'm thinking, or, you know, that's an agenda. But is it pure? Is it something that truly benefits the community, or does it benefit you? Because it's easy to get a $2,700 check from the city to go feed the homeless. You can feed them for $200. The rest of the money is going to you. And that's what's happening. So when that happened, and when everything shut down, and when COVID hit and everything just went away, the homeless community, the unhoused, was just left to die. They were left to suffer. They were left to starve. And those are the spaces that we as leaders, as advocates, as community folks, we have to be in those spaces. We have to always think of others and always think, where does the community need us? Not where I want to be, because it was hot. We didn't want to be out there. Some days we were sweating, and we wanted to be anywhere else. You know, we're tired too, you know, after a long day of work, but we knew that we needed to be there because they needed us. So it wasn't about us. It was about the folks that are depending on us to come out there and give them what they need as far as services. And then there's other stuff going on in community. You know, one of the questions that was posed to me going into this Zoom today was not only how does the community get involved, but how does the community know what to get involved in? And I really can say to you, and everything I've said so far, it really has to be something that you feel wholeheartedly about. It can't be half-assed. It can't be something you're forced to do. So I can't tell you, I want everybody to come out and I want you to advocate for breast cancer. If you don't feel it and you don't want to, and that's not your thing, then it's going to show. It's going to show in your presence. It's going to show in your level of involvement. So as far as what you're going to get into, it does have to be something that you're passionate about. Sure, if you're going to speak on it, you do have to be educated enough to speak on it. You do. But some support is merely just your body. And people don't understand that. When we put out a call for action and say we need you to come out and support And I've put many out. I've put calls for action out for sex trafficking. I've put calls for action out for protect Black women. I've put calls for action out for immigration reform and kids in cages. I've put a call for action out for feeding the homeless and bringing out clothing. A lot of people donate clothing to Goodwill. I said, give it to me. Let me go out here and give these clothes. You have children that are sleeping on the streets. You got juvenile and runaways out here that are sleeping all downtown, up and down the street. Let's take this clothing out to them, because Goodwill is just going to profit off you. But the people need it right now. They're out here waiting for it because they need the clothing. So let's take it out to them. So when I put all these different calls for action out, and I say autism awareness, come out. I need the community support. And I put everything out here on social media, and I pass out the cards within the community, all these postcards, and the lack of community shows up. That's a clear message to me that we are truly suffering as a community. We are suffering as a community when we can't get people to come out and give a damn about what's directly impacting our community. Now, when I say that, I mean, all of us live next door to somebody. So when I say what's directly impacting the community, I mean that if we can talk about what we see on the news, why can't we talk about the things that are going on underneath all of our roofs? All of us are impacted by these things in one way or another. We all know somebody that's been affected by, say, cancer. All of us know that. So why would any of us act like that's not something we need to support? We need to, we have to. It's our duty. It's our duty as a community. When you say it takes a village to raise a child, it takes a community to take care of the community. We all need each other. We all do. And we're all affected by something. We all know somebody that's dealing with something. And none of us can sit in this position and say our lives are perfect and there's nothing going on in my life. Everything's fine. Everything's perfect. I have no worries. Everything's good. We are in the middle of a national pandemic worldwide. It affected everybody. So here we are, all of us now, all ages, all races, all walks of life, all of us were instantly going through the same thing at the same time, all of us. So that right there should have been a very indicative point for all of us to see, wow, we really all have more in common than we act like we do. We really all have more in common than we say, because now we're all going through this. Now we're all looking for toilet paper, right? All of us. Here we are. It had nothing to do with race. It had nothing to do with socioeconomic. It had nothing to do with how much money you had versus how much money she has. Or nothing to do with that. Here we are now. We all need toilet paper. We all need water. Here we are. It's what, 8 million people filing for unemployment. A lot of those people filing for unemployment have careers. They've gone to school. They've gone to college. They got degrees. They've been on the job for years and years and years, and now here they are filing for unemployment. So that put us all on the same playing field for a second, at least, you know? So that right there should have got the community to understand just how much we all really have in common and how much we really do need each other, you know, as a community. So when people want to know how to get involved, I always say support. We need you to come out. We need you to support us. Now, some things are a little more extreme on that extreme advocacy, a little more vigilante. You know, I know that street protests are not for everybody. I have not always felt that way. I have not always been able to say that out of my mouth. It took me some time to understand that, because I come from a place to where I thought, well, everybody should be out here. Everybody should be out here. I mean, how can someone watch something like a George Floyd happen and not get involved? Anybody. How could anybody see that and not want to be out here, not be just as angry as us, not be wanting to be out here and pound this pavement with us? That's what I felt. And I realized, in talking to a lot of folks that I respect, that I look up to, that came before me, and I had to come to that realization, okay, so the street protests are simply just not for everybody. Okay. Okay, so then what? So then what does a person do? What does a person do that says, I'm not with the protesting, you know, maybe they're handicapped, maybe they're disabled, maybe they're scared. They're scared of what the protesting is and what they see on TV, because that's really what it is. That's what really pumps fear into people, is what they see on TV. So maybe you have a person like that. So then what does that person do? And I've had people say to me, you know, I can't come out there with you guys, but what else can I do, right? So then that was my responsibility there, and as a leader to say, okay, well, this is what you can do. You can write the different police, offices. You can write these elected officials. You can tweet them. You can either email them. You can go down. They have Zoom calls that you can get on. That's when I was able to say, okay, well, you can do these other things, right? Or you can simply give to the protest by making sure we have water out here. You know, things like that go a long way. I'm going to turn my light on. Sorry, it's getting dark. Hold on just a sec. Okay, sorry, I didn't realize my light wasn't on. There I am. Okay, so then I was able to then give people suggestions on what they can do if they don't physically want to come out to an actual protest. What else can you do, right? And then also, as far as getting involved, so the protest is not for you, right? But then it gets confusing because you'll have folks come out for other events of protest style, right? So take the breast cancer, for example. They have the breast cancer walks and people show up by the hundreds. So you can come out to something like that. You can come out to the Women's March by the hundreds. You can go out to something like that. When RBG died, I went down to the Capitol and there were hundreds of folks out there for her. So then I look at that, me as a leader that's out here every day protesting, doing what I do. I look at that and I think, wow, so you guys can come to this stuff, but when it comes to Black lives, you stay at home. So then there's that piece that I question, that I truly I don't understand, because I say to myself, what is it about Black lives that causes you to stay at home? Because if it's come out in pink, wear pink, dress up your car, dress up your dog, and come on out, they come out. Even MLK Day. We do those parades every single year out here at Sac City College, and there's hundreds of people, hundreds. I think this last, the last one we did just this year, I believe there was like 500 people there. They come out. So then I had to figure out how to get people to come out to the events that we do that are informational and educational and that are for a cause that we need to get people on board with the movement of the Black Lives Matter movement. And not just the Black Lives Matter, but when we say our lives matter, that's just a minimum. That's just a minimum. So when we talk about what's happening out here in the streets, if we talk about police brutality or we talk about police killings, we have to dive a little deeper into that too by asking, okay, so these things are happening, but why? Why are these officers getting away with these things? Why? What's causing them all? Because it's not just because they're white officers, and it's not just happening in one place. It's happening all over the country. So what is it that's causing these officers to not be held accountable? So then I had to study what's called the PROBAR, right? So then the Police Officer Bill of Rights, for those of you that don't know what that is. So I had to study that. And that right there was the answer that I was so looking for and so frustrated about, because that is what allows them to get off. So then I thought, okay, well then we got to redo this. You know, we got the PROBAR. It's written wrong. We gotta rewrite this thing. We gotta go fight to get some things changed in there, because language matters, wording matters. It matters to the point to where these officers are getting off for killing people left and right across the whole nation. So then that took me into spaces where there were meetings where I can go into that the police officers were in, and we could talk about these heavy topics and dive into these dialogues that nobody wants to do. Nobody. So this is the frustration right now with protesting. For one, the momentum has gone down. So someone dies, folks come out. Everybody's so sad, they're so upset, everybody's angry, right? And then, you know, after a couple protests, everybody goes home, they stay home, they don't come back out. Then somebody else has to die. And then they come back out. So, but in between, the momentum dies down. But the issues are still there. The issues of them killing us is still there. So that momentum goes down. So the frustrating piece for me is, what can we do to keep people involved on a consistent basis? So that ties into leadership, right? So you have different leaders out here, and they are organizing different types of march. Now, protest was one of the subjects for tonight that I know you guys wanted me to speak about. And protesting looks different in a lot of different spaces. okay? Protesting a lot of times is based on who is organizing it. Right now, what you have going on in masses is a lot of young folks. Now, when I say young folks, I mean millennial age, even down to teenagers. I've had 14-year-olds organize protest and ask me to come lead. It's folks that know nothing about protesting. They don't know the art of a protest, and there is an art. They don't know the etiquette of a protest. There's definitely an etiquette of a protest. And there's a purpose of protesting. That's the biggest key that I can bring to this conversation about protest, is that there's supposed to be a purpose behind it. There's so many people that want to get out and run amok within the streets. They want to walk aimlessly as if they're lost, and there's no purpose to it. There's no point to it. No one's learning anything. For me, I like to do protesting in an educational way. I always call, for me, protesting, I like to call them field trips. As we're protesting, I want to educate those folks that have come to support me as the organizer on why are we doing this? Why are we out here? And what can we do to begin to fix these issues? And let's have these conversations that many folks cannot have at home. They can't have with their loved ones because a lot of them don't even know that they're out here, you know? So what can we do to support those that don't know what's going out here? What do we do, us as leaders? What can we do to bring, you know, light and attention on those things? I also feel a great deal of responsibility to those that are protesting with me. I have a responsibility to keep my crowd safe. And I would never want something to happen to somebody that's at a protest of mine that could have been prevented. Now, in saying that, there's many times that things go awry. That's just what protesting, when you're out here in the streets, especially when you're in the streets, literally, I mean, that's just something that kind of just comes along with it. Sometimes things are going to happen. And we do our best to de-escalate those matters, and we do our best to keep people as safe as we possibly can. However, things do happen. But there's a lot of things that can be prevented as well. And that right there, for me, in watching a lot of the protests that are going on right now, that's the real frustrating piece for me, because these organizers are not concerned with keeping their folks safe. It's actually the exact opposite of that. Not everybody. I got to be very, very specific in what I'm saying. Not everybody. But there's two kind of protests. So there's an informational protest, the daytime protest, or maybe a nighttime protest, but it's informational. It's with purpose. This is what we're doing today. This is our march, and this is our route. That means it's been planned. That means it's organized. We know what we're doing. We're not just on the spur of the moment trying to figure this thing out. And then there's the protesting where let's come out at night and let's just destroy things, but we don't really know why, though. You don't really know why. So I understand the anger of a riot. I understand, like Martin Luther King said, riot is a language of the unheard. That is true. I understand it. And I understand the looting. I understand it all. And I understand that want to burn things down. I understand that too. And I can only tell you this, there's a time and place for that. And there has to be certain people in play that are organizing and that are in a position of leadership with these type of protests that have to be the ones in charge of that. That's not for everybody to do. That becomes very dangerous when folks think that they can get a crowd together, not letting the crowd know what they're about to get themselves into, get them out here, and then all hell breaks loose and you hold up your hands like, well, I don't know what's going on. I didn't know that was going to happen. When you did. So revolutionary acts along those lines is simply that. It's not something you advertise. It's not something that you have to gear up to. Revolutionary acts are truly just that. This is what needs to be done, and we all know it, and we got to go out there and we have to get it done. So I'm going to tell you my opinion when it comes to destruction of property and when it comes to a lot of things that you guys see on TV and you hear on TV. And this is not a popular opinion, but I'll just want to be as honest and forthcoming and as transparent as I can be for the purposes of this this show tonight. So there's a lot of different levels when it comes to destruction of property. I want to tell you that loss of life and loss of property is not the same. It's not the same at all. I also want to say that these acts would not occur if it wasn't for the fact that there are people that have taken the lives of others in a very innocent way people that were unarmed, people that should not be dead. So these are counteracts to what is happening around us, let's say, okay? So I'll be blunt and say this. You go out and you kill an unarmed Black man, and you expect for the community to not be enraged behind that. That's not fair, right? That's not even rational for you to think that we're not going to feel a certain kind of way behind that, okay? George Floyd, if we talk about him, us having to watch that agonizing 8 minutes and 46 seconds, all of us were able to put ourselves there. All of us were able to look at that Black man on that ground and think of our fathers, our brothers, our children, our grandparents, our friends. We all were able to look at that. Everybody saw that. Everybody was able to experience that across this nation. You see something like that, and you think that it's not going to cause rage amongst us as a community. Not just outside our community, there should be rage there too, but within our communities, having to see this all of our life, having to go back into historical times of what was done to us, which is very indicative of what's happening even now. So when we see something like this and these things happen to us as a people over and over and over, and not to mention that they happen, but there's never justice, there's never accountability. So officers have a right to kill. They're able to go out, they're able to kill unarmed folks, right? And they're able to use the excuse of, I feared for my life. Now, that's become the mantra across the nation with these officers when they kill us. So I ask this, when you're arresting a white man that's gone into a school and shot up children, that has a weapon that you see him having, and you know that knowingly are going into this situation knowing he's killed children, you go into a situation with a white man that's gone into a church and shot up folks in the church, and you knowingly know that's what you're walking into. These white men are always arrested peacefully without incident, every single time. So they walk up on these folks with the guns in hand, and they're able to do what? De-escalate the situation. But they don't do that for us. They don't do that for us. And that's what we're seeing. So when we talk about these instances, a lot of folks want to say, well, you know, he should have, you know, why did he run away? Why did he turn his back? Why was he rude? Why did he reach for her purse? You know, well, why? The whys are not what you should be asking. The why is, why did you feel it necessary to take a person's life? That's what we should be talking about. So no, destruction of property, breaking a window, that's not the same as the fact that you have men and women that have been killed, that have children, they have mothers, they have fathers, and they will never be here again. So this is the idea of destruction of property. This is the notion behind it, I can tell you. The only thing that folks understand is loss of life and loss of income. That's the only thing people understand. Humanity himself. That's all that people understand. So when we go out and say there's destruction, what happened with George Floyd? There was destruction of property. There were broken windows. There was broken car windows. My car was broken. All my windows were busted out. My car was only a month old. So hey, it happened to me too. Like I said, windows of businesses were then, broken, and then folks even went in and looted a lot of these businesses. And I asked this question, and I've asked this question to business owners, especially in the downtown area. I've said to them, how much of you give back to the Black community? What do you do for the Black community? What do you do in an instance of somebody that is right here in your backyard, Stephon Clark, Marshall Miles, Brandon Smith, Daryl Richards? What do you do for these families and for these Black men that have lost their lives due to police murder? And the answer is typically nothing. So then I ask you, why should we care about you losing money when you don't put that money into the community anyway? That's the question. That's the question I wonder. That's what I want to know. That's what I want to ask. So it's very difficult for me to understand why we're supposed to be focused on the broken window that you're going to get replaced. I mean, you have insurance, you'll get that window will be replaced. But Why are we not talking about these lives that are lost and these families that now have to go on without their loved ones? That should be the topic of conversation. So when media comes up and they want to ask me, you know, about the looting and the rioting and I have to always bring them back to reality. I don't even want to talk about that. I want to talk about why did that man have to die on that hot concrete for 8 minutes and 46 seconds? Why was his knee in his neck? Why did he kill him? That's what I want to talk about. So for me, I'm not going to talk about a broken window. Like I said, my car, I put it in the shop, my insurance paid for it. I'm back to driving down the road, but I'm alive. I'm alive to be able to do that. Now I could have been upset about it. And you know, it hurt my feelings a little bit. It was a brand new car, but I'd be a hypocrite to say that I'm angry that those folks did that. I can even say I was out there with you guys, keeping you safe, and my windows were busted. But I'd be a hypocrite to say that because I do understand it. I also understand, and I need everybody to understand, that a lot of times these different acts of violence are not done by us. There are infiltrators that come into these groups simply to do stuff like that. They tear up everything, they cause the destruction, and then us, we get blamed for it. And that's happened many times. So that also has to be taken into consideration when we're talking about those things as well, because, you know, when you're not out here, it looks a lot different than what you think it does. I'm not saying I don't care about people's business. I too am a business owner. I got 3 businesses. So I understand that piece, but it doesn't supersede the lives that we lost. And I'm not going to allow the conversation to shift. And I'm not going to allow people then to not talk about what I feel is most important, to then talk about broken windows and whatnot. That's not what I'm going to do. So we have to put these things in perspective when we're talking about protesting and how these protests. You have to make sure that you know who your leadership is. That's very important. There's a lot of things that I've had to walk away from out here in the community. I found myself at certain protests where I've literally had to leave because they were not something that I wanted to represent me. And I have to think of my brand. I have to think of what does represent me. I have to think of my reputation out here as a leader. And I have to do what's going to make me feel good at night, not just go with the flow because that's what somebody wants to do tonight. I cannot do that. So that's not how I operate as far as going out and doing this work within the community. I love to support organizations. I truly do. Any chance I get. Anytime I'm invited to something, I go. The only way I can't go is if I'm already booked for that time slot. But if I do have the availability to go, I go, because that's what I want from people. That's what we need. That's how we get bigger, and that's how we get stronger as a community, is supporting each other. And another thing too about protesting, if you're confused on how this works and you have questions, no questions too stupid, and you really don't know because all you do know is what you see on TV or what you hear about, why would you not come out and have these conversations with us? Why would you not ask these difficult questions? Why would you not come out just to see, you know, what it's like? Because the protesting, I know for me, and I can even speak for Damien as well, the protesting that we've done, it's safe. It's safe. We have fun. It's with purpose. We know what we're doing. We get the community involved. You know, we keep our eye out for things that are unsafe. We have some type of security, you know, that's there. We have medical folks on staff in case anybody needs any medical issues, especially with the heat. You know, a lot of people with heat exhaustion, that was an issue this summer. So we know what we're doing, I guess is the point. Some folks don't. And I appreciate those that have called me in areas. I've had many young kids come up and say to me, you know, I was raised to be racist. My parents voted for Trump. You know, they raised me to feel a certain way, but I don't believe that anymore. And I think that they were wrong. And next thing you know, they say, I want to have an action in my town. Will you come and will you leave? And I do that with honor, even though that's taken me into some crazy spaces. I mean, Wheatland, Auburn, Placerville. I mean, man, some places that Loomis, I mean, I could just go on and on. Places where Nevada City, that was crazy. But places where I know we ain't supposed to be, you know, like this is maybe not a good idea. However, but the folks showed up. The folks showed up. And because of that person that has the courage to walk up to me, because that's breaking the cycle. That's what we want. That's what we want. We want the cycle to be broken. That's what we're looking for, right? That's how these generational curses end is by somebody being courageous enough to break that cycle. And that's exactly what we're seeing out here. And they're courageous enough to be able to say, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to do chants. I don't know how to lead this stuff, but I know how to put a flyer together and put some on social media and get the people here. That's awesome. So I say to them, you get the people there, I'll come and I'll lead. And that's what we do. And I do that with honor. And I've gotten a lot of heat from that from my own community. I've had a lot of folks say, wow, why would you go out there? Why would you put a target on your back? We don't belong out there. Well, I disagree. I disagree because I feel like there should be no space that we can't step into. This is America, right? United States of America. We're supposed to be united. So although I wouldn't have gone there voluntarily just because either A, I don't know anyone there, or I have no business there. So I wouldn't have gone there just on one Saturday afternoon for no reason. But now, if I'm invited into this space, then I'm going to dominate and I'm going to make it my own. And that's exactly what we've done. And yeah, we've got a lot of counter protests. Sure. I mean, we get that no matter where we go. We get that everywhere, all the time. I mean, that's just, that goes without saying. But even they too are being educated. They don't think they are, but they are. They're listening and they're watching. So they're being educated too, because everything is not a political front. And see, that's what right now, and I guess it's, the elections, here. So I guess that, we're just the climate that we're in right now. But everything is not about politics. I'll give you an example. I did a protest at Dutch Bros. I mean, there's probably 20 different staff members of Dutch Bros out there that were having internal issues with their employment there. There were some racial things going on. There was some, not just racial, but there was some sexual harassment going on, a lot of different things. So I was asked to come and support these employees as they wanted to basically boycott Dutch Bros based on how they were being treated in the workspace. Well, it didn't take long for the Trumpers to show up. Now, what's it got to do with Trump? This wasn't a Trump issue. This wasn't a Biden issue. This had nothing to do with politics. This was about employment. This was about something internal going on with Dutch Bros. And here they are. And here comes the hatred. And that right there is what's happening everywhere we go. And we just have to be ready for stuff like that. We got to be ready for the physical part of it too. And there's been a lot of physical. There's been a lot of physical altercations at these spaces. I've been physically attacked a few times. There's been cars that have ran into our space and hit people standing right next to me. That is something that I get it. It's not for everybody. I know that just comes along with the territory that I'm choosing to be a part. I choose to be on the front line. So, and that being my choice, I will continue to go out regardless of the threats, regardless of what I'm up against, because the moment that those of us stop, the moment that we say it's too much, I'm staying home, what happens to our community? Who advocates for them? Who's going to be their voice? Because right now that's us. And then what happens to the legacy we leave behind? Because we have children that look up to us. We have family members. We even have friends that look up to us to be out here to do what we're doing. So the moment we step back and allow the people that have that hatred within them to win, so to speak, then we lose. We lose this. And what is the fight, you ask? The fight is liberation. The fight is revolution. The fight is inclusion. The fight is that we all can come together and be united as one. That's the fight. So this is not a black thing, white thing, Hispanic thing. This is a fight that we're all under, all of us. We're all under the same fight, and all of us have a piece in this fight. We all do. We all do. So I really like to harp on that and make that a big part of the conversation, because we are all connected, all of us. We are all connected one way or another. I'm multiracial, and I'm a lot of things. I'm a lot of things. So I tap into a lot of different, issues, because I can relate to a lot of things going on out here within the community. So I'm going to stop right there and see